Hello my Beatles friends, welcome back to another video. This is the second video in the series of a relatively unknown and forgotten Beatles B-sides and Beatles rare songs. The previous video about the song You Know My Name, Look Up the Number was very successful, one of the most successful videos on my channel, so I think that you like this kind of content, and that's why I'm happily gonna continue this series. And I would really appreciate if you would like this video, subscribe to my channel, and watch it till the end. So, I don't want to make this video very long, so I will get into it right away. The song that I'm going to talk about is a very unique song. Very unique song in many different ways. I refer to this song as the Beatles' first, in a certain way, the Beatles' last in another way, and the Beatles' only, the first, the last, and the only. And I will explain each category. First of all, the song we're talking about is George Harrison's Inner Light. This is the original UK single that I have on Push Out Center, and this is the B-side to Lady Madonna. That's not news for us. I also have another copy, and I have another copy, but this one is a Solid Center UK. I have a beautiful German version with the picture sleeve, and I have two copies of Portuguese market on the red Parlophone label. I have actually two. And I also have this unique EP that contains this song. But we're gonna talk about it step by step. So first of all, this is a song written by George Harrison and was released as a B-side to Lady Madonna single on March 15, 1968. I'm gonna talk about the origin of the song, why it was released and recorded, what led to that. I'm gonna talk about the recording sessions. Then I'm gonna be talking about why George wrote that song in the first place, when and how it was recorded in different sessions. You know, on those sessions, not only this song was recorded, so many other things were recorded as well, and I will be talking about that as well. And then I will talk about how and when this song was released and where you can find it. In order to understand the origin of this song, we're gonna ask the man himself, the writer himself, in the book I Me Mine. Who can give you the answer better than the author himself? So I'm gonna briefly read the text. The inner light came really from within you without you. There was a David Frost show on television about meditation. Maharishi Mahesh Yogi was interviewed on tape with John Lennon and myself live, and amongst many others in the audience was Juan Mascaro, who is the Sanskrit teacher at Cambridge University. He wrote me a letter saying, a few days ago, two friends from abroad gave me the recording of your song Within You Without You. I am very happy. It is a moving song, and may it move the souls of millions. And there is more to come, as you are only beginning on the great journey. He also sent me a copy of a book called Lamps of Fire, and in his letter he says, might it not be interesting to put into your music a few words of Tao? For example, number 48, page 66 of the book, and that's where the words the inner light come from. It's a translation from the Tao Te Ching. The instruments were all Indian, all played by Indian musicians and recorded in HMV studios in Bombay. I think the song went unnoticed by most people because I was getting a bit out of it as far as Western popular music was concerned at that period. In the original poem, the verse says, without going out of my door, I can know the ways of heaven. And so to prevent any misinterpretations and also to make the song a bit longer, I did repeat that as a second verse, but made it without going out of your door. So that it included everybody. The song was written especially for Juan Mascaro because he sent me a book and he's a sweet old man. It was nice, the words said everything. Amen. The guy was impressed by George Harrison's previous song Within You Without You. He sent him the book. This happened before George and Beatles went to India, to Bombay, and George was working at that time on the solo album, which is the Wonderwall music soundtrack to the film, a project outside of the Beatles. This is actually the first solo album by any of the Beatles, and it's a first solo album that will be released on Apple label. But we'll talk about that later. Here are some passages from the two other books which I mentioned previously. January the 12th, 1968, George completed the recording needed for Wonderwall and began recording ragas. This is the Indian music style, that's called ragas, and other traditional pieces of music for possible use on Beatles records, one of which was the basic track for The Inner Light. By January the 12th, 1968, the Wonderwall music sessions was complete, but George still had musicians and the studio booked. So he asked them to play a few pieces of Indian music, just instrumentals, for possible future use, in order not to waste the studio time. And one of those instrumentals turned out to be the basic track for The Inner Light. The Beatles overdubs to this basic track happened on 6th and 8th of February 1968 in London Abbey Road Studios. The recording took 5 takes. January the 6th, 1968. The Inner Light was all but completed during the first session, George adding vocals to a copy of Bombay backing track and then mixing the recording into mono. February the 6th, Ringo appeared live on BBC television Silla, taking part in sketches, singing and even tap dancing. The other 3 were working at that time and finishing Lady Madonna and Inner Light. On February the 8th, John and Paul overdubbed their vocals to the final section of The Inner Light and mostly finished the song. 8th of February session was mostly dedicated to John's recording of Across the Universe, with which he remained unhappy. During the rest of the session, from 10 p.m. to 12:15 a.m., he could not disagree with the group decision to select Lady Madonna as the A-side of the planned single and The Inner Light as the B-side, relegating Across the Universe unused to the library shelf. Spike Milligan, who happened to be attending the session as a guest of George Martin, requested permission to include Across the Universe on a charity album to benefit the World Wildlife Fund, a project he had conceived in December 1967. The Beatles agreed, but the LP, No One's Gonna Change Our World, the title based on the lyric of Across the Universe, wasn't released until December 1969, and for that purpose the song was adorned with wildlife sound effects during a stereo mix session at EMI on 2nd of October 1969. Spike Milligan was a major inspiration for the Beatles, especially John Lennon, and they shared connections through the comedy group The Goon Show, which Milligan co-created. Milligan's comedy and radio show were highly influential on the Beatles, particularly John Lennon. Members of The Goon Show, including Milligan and Peter Sellers, maintained professional and personal relationship with the Beatles. Sir George Martin, a key producer for the Beatles, also produced some of Milligan's work, including his 1961 LP, Milligan Preserved. Later, that song was overproduced by Phil Spector and released on Let It Be album. This album, Our World, No One's Gonna Change Our World, saw the release of Across the Universe, the first version, before the Let It Be album. And this is one of the rare occasions that Beatles' original song was released for the first time outside of the Beatles record. This album was put together by George Martin. Personnel, who appears on that song? George Harrison, lead vocals and direction. And the rest of the musicians were Indian musicians. Like I mentioned before, the basic track was recorded in Bombay. The overdubs were done in London. John Lennon and Paul McCartney added harmony vocals to the last verse of the song. Ringo does not appear on that song because he was having fun on the TV show. This song was released several times. First of all, it was released on the single as a B-side to Lady Madonna, as I mentioned previously. And during the years, it appeared on different variations, different compilations, since it's a non-album song. It appeared in rarities by the end of 70s on both European and American versions. Then it appeared on past masters, and also it appeared on the CD for the first time in 1988. And it appeared also on these Brazilian and Spanish compilations. Apart from that, it's a relatively forgotten song and not being used on many different compilations. However, these versions that I'm talking about, they are only in mono. There was never released a stereo version of that song, apart from one occasion. This rare EP that appeared in the blue box of EPs contained this extra EP. And it has The Inner Light as the first song. And it says here, originally this was issued as the B-side of the single Lady Madonna in 1968. However, this is the first time the track has been released in stereo. So this is the only stereo version of the song that you have. The rest are the mono, or maybe stripped down stereo. This is the true stereo. As I mentioned in the beginning of this video, why I refer to this song as to be the first, the last, and the only. The first, it's because it's a very unique song. It's the first George Harrison written song to appear on the Beatles single ever, which means Beatles recognized the talent of George Harrison, could no longer ignore him, and he was no longer overshadowed by a Lennon-McCartney duo. Even McCartney said the following, I quote, "Forget the Indian music and listen to the melody. Don't you think it's a beautiful melody? It's really lovely." Paul McCartney, 1968. And even John could not disagree that this song should appear on the single. The sessions that produced that song is the album called Wonderwall Music. This is a first solo album by any of the Beatles, and it's the first album to ever appear on the freshly created Apple label. So this is the first category. Category first. Now, why is it the last song? This is the last of the three Indian raga type songs written by George. Love You Too, Within You Without You, and The Inner Light. Three Indian songs. And also, Lady Madonna and Inner Light single is the last single to appear on Silver Black Parlophone label. The next single already appeared on Apple. And why this song is the only. This is the only Beatles song ever released from 1962 till 70 during the working years of the Beatles before the breakup. The only song to be recorded outside of the European continent. The majority of the songs were recorded in United Kingdom. 2 songs were recorded in France. And this is the only song to be recorded outside of Europe. Very, very unique song. I personally really like the song. I personally really like the lyrics. And I think it's a great song. And it's a beautiful song. And the lyrics are uplifting and give you hope. So, thank you very much for watching. I really recommend another book. And if you want to know which are the other books that I recommend, please watch my other video, the link to which is going to be here. Yeah, just click on it and you can watch the previous video, and you will see which books I recommend. So this is book number 3 that I recommend. Thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned. We're gonna be discussing the Free as a Bird video, complete breakdown in our next video, and finding all the Easter eggs and all the references to all the possible songs that we see in the frame. So stay tuned for that, and it's gonna be very interesting. Thank you very much. Bye bye.